recession or economic pullback in the future, typically the pattern is what we've seen so far. You have interest rates going up before a recession. They come down quite a bit during a recession. Falling interest rates is good for gold. Also, in recessions, typically governments spend to get out of recession, and so that kind of kicks into the virtuous cycle for gold as well. So there's a lot to like about the outlook for gold. We're allocated very heavily to it right now at SMI. The one caveat that I would throw out there is that as the economy heads into recession, I'm not saying we will, but if we do, very often that is accompanied by some kind of either mild or severe market turmoil. And when those periods of kind of investor panic hit, gold and precious metals tend to get hit right along with the market. Part of that is people sell what they can rather than what they really want to, and gold is very liquid. So usually you see in those types of environments like 2008, 2020, you see gold take a big hit. It goes down before it then bounces and recovers very well. So I would just caution folks who are thinking maybe I need to go out and increase my gold position quite a bit. You may not want to load the boat completely here, but maybe you hold back a little bit in anticipation that there may be a buying opportunity at some point on the horizon where you might be able to take advantage of that temporary hit when everything goes down, including gold, and then ride that recovery that gold usually does very, very well in. If you look back at like the March to August run for gold in 2020, gold got hit in March with everything else, February and March, but then it recovered very, very strongly in the months following. So that's kind of our short-term and long-term outlook for gold. Very strong long-term, a little bit of a caution short-term, but hopefully that's helpful, Rob.
Yeah, Mark, anything on the BRICS announcement in July that they were going to use gold behind that digital currency?
風邪いってるね、後ろ。今行くよ。
Things that have to happen before that would actually be any type of viable alternative to the dollar. There's a lot of desire on the part of those countries to move away from the dollar, but very little ability. They really have very little in common between those countries other than their desire to kind of change the current system. Now, the one thing that is relevant to gold there is those countries and other countries have been buying a lot of gold through their central banks to use as national reserves. And so that, I think, and we talk about this in the article we've been discussing, I think that has been a big reason why we haven't seen gold drop as much as we would expect given what's happened with interest rates. And I think that's because there's been that steady underlying bid from these national central banks gobbling up a lot of gold. So I don't really think this gold-backed currency is really much of a thing for us to really have to be concerned about or deal with right now. But the very fact that they're talking about it is kind of providing support for the gold price. So that's good for gold investors.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Mark, just 60 seconds left. Tie a bow on this for us, but looking through a biblical worldview, of course, a lot of talk about fear and uncertainty. Obviously, our trust needs to remain in the Lord, right?
Yeah, it absolutely does. You know, there has always been uncertainty. There have always been issues and problems. And, you know, to be frank, gold has helped people through some of those in the past. But our salvation is never in that. Our security is never in that. Our security is in the Lord. And we need to be asking prayerfully for the Lord's direction and how we interpret information like we've been discussing today and how we apply that to our savings and our investing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, Mark, appreciate so much our partnership with you and the team at SMI. Thanks for your time today. We covered a lot of ground. It was really helpful, and we'll look forward to having you back again real soon.
Thanks, Rob. Always my pleasure.
All right. That's Mark Biller, executive editor at Sound Mind Investing. You can read this article, Checking Up on Gold, at soundmindinvesting.org. No subscription required. It's there for your reading pleasure, soundmindinvesting.org. Well, on behalf of my team today, Jim Henry, Robert Sutherland, Robert Youngblood, and Devin Patrick, I'm Rob West. So thankful that you were along with us today. I hope what we shared was helpful and encouraging, and perhaps gave you a different perspective on gold, but ultimately pointed you back to a biblical worldview that God owns it all. We're stewards and we're brief sojourners here on this earth, so let's keep focused on the eternal. Have a great rest of your day, and come back and join us tomorrow. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
90.5 KTXG, Greenville, Dallas.
Hamilton III.
If you really want to see the tides turning in our country, can I challenge you and encourage you? If the Lord would grab a hold of us in our family, you would see the tide in our politics turn.
The Hamilton Corner, weekday afternoons at 5 Central on American Family Radio.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, almost to keep. Hurricane Idalia strengthened to a major hurricane as it made landfall near Keaton Beach, Florida, bringing catastrophic damage to many areas. Steve Harrigan is in Tarpon Springs with the latest.
The winds have not been as dramatic where we are, but the real danger is this storm surge. It could get up to 16 feet in some areas. So already we're seeing 3 to 4 feet of water, and local officials are telling us we're going to see 2 more feet before high tide ends here. So that's the real danger. We're seeing flooded houses, flooded buildings, destroyed areas, and the real challenge is trying to get from one place to the other. The wind isn't blowing, the trees aren't being knocked down, it's daylight, and yet the water continues to rise.
Levy County Emergency Management Director John McDonald says he doesn't expect the storm conditions to be gone anytime soon.
We still have some stuff coming in through some banding and all that throughout the day. That's probably going to go through to probably, even as far as 6 p.m., even when that system's probably all the way out in the Atlantic Ocean by then.
In a blistering opinion piece, the Wall Street Journal editorial board accused President Biden of trying to rewrite history after his administration took credit for reopening schools after COVID-19 closures. The White House released a statement touting Biden's, quote, swift actions and historic investments that led to every school in America safely reopening for in-person instruction. Washington Examiner national politics reporter Zelina Zito says it's laughable to hear Biden take credit for opening schools when it was his administration that was responsible for the lockdowns.
This is one that really hit a lot of people hard, no matter where your political politics lies. And it's one that people are still feeling. Parents are still feeling the effect of the lack of education, but also the lack of interaction between other people, that human connection that helps young people thrive and grow and learn. And that is associated with the Biden administration, with them not being forceful in opening the schools, and for them at a lot of times bowing to political pressure from the unions.
A Colorado public school diversity teacher said in private emails that he was struggling with the urge to, quote, burn things down, which didn't represent equity. Casey Mininger is a diversity teacher in Jefferson County Public School District's Foster K-8 school. Mininger was involved in crafting the curriculum for other teachers to present to their classes. Mininger wanted classes to be focused on bad things done by white people. Civil rights attorney and former public school teacher Leo Terrell says this man is a danger.
He is a clear and present danger to that school. Those are statements of somebody who is emotionally unstable. And he's a school teacher. He also said he wanted to burn things down. That's a threat to the school and the school environment. And that person, that teacher is still teaching within the school district. Why? Because there's an acceptance of DEI in the school district. And people don't understand this. They are trying to indoctrinate our young kids on dividing this country solely by race.
The Georgia School Board voted to fire a veteran teacher for reading a book on gender fluidity to her 5th grade class.
Fox News reports Due West Elementary teacher Katie Winderly ran into trouble after reading My Shadow is Purple to students, which features a non-binary character. Christian author and commentator Janice Krause believes the board did the right thing.
And for a teacher to manipulate students by reading a book like that and fostering those kinds of ideas onto children.
和ずひとくんは車椅子でもう一緒。車椅子。
Says the fact that she was reading a small child's book to 5th graders is very revealing about her intention to indoctrinate rather than teach students.
A little bitty children's book like that for that 10, 11, 12-year-old age, no. They should be reading something more complicated than that. So these are children who are used to reading chapter books. Reading a child's book like that is very inappropriate.
Fox reports the vote to terminate Winderly was along party lines. I'm Bob Kellogg.
More news online at afn.net. I'm Rusty Pete.
AFA is no longer dependent on Facebook or YouTube to live stream our original programming. As of now, American Family Radio shows like Today's Issues, The Court, Airing the Addisons, and The Hamilton Corner are streaming live on the AFA streaming app. Independent live streaming is the next step as we come out from among them and separate.
体を動かすようになって良くなった？体動くようになった？
Here's your host, Tim Wildman, President of the American Family Association.
いい人だよね、みんな。いい人だよね。
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's issues on the American Family Radio Network. Thanks for listening to AFR. I'm Tim Wildman with Fred Jackson. Good morning, Fred.
Good morning, Tim.
And Chris Woodward. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning.
Abraham Hamilton III will be with us at the bottom of the hour. If you've never heard Abe's testimony, it's powerful, and we're going to let him share some of that today because we're talking about the hurricane that's hitting the Florida, Georgia, South Carolina area right now, and Hurricane Katrina really changed Abe's life story.
Yeah, sure did.
Because he grew up in New Orleans. We'll let him talk about that, but boy, I was watching the weather right now, and this storm, Hurricane Idalia, Chris, is that slammed the Big Bend area of Florida, now moving over North Florida, South Georgia, and into South Carolina.
Yeah, pretty much. If you can kind of picture that in your mind, imagine a bunch of green and red, just kind of a big green and red blob that you see on a weather map moving over the Florida-Georgia line. It's looking like it's going to be in South Carolina. A lot of wind, a lot of rain, record-tying rainfall in some areas. Governor DeSantis.
Category 3?
Yes, it hit as a Category 3. Fox Weather just said it's a Category 1 at the moment as it's moving through. But Governor DeSantis has warned about tornadoes and other things that may spin up as a result of this storm.
Now, Fred, you have a family member who lives in South Carolina, right?
In the Columbia area of South Carolina. Talked to our youngest daughter this morning, and what they're bracing for is some wind, but also some heavy rain. They're talking 5 to 7 inches of rain there. So it's going to be that rain event as the storm moves along. But those coastal areas of Georgia and South Carolina, they're also the wind, the surge, all that sort of thing. It's really interesting. I was watching, Fox has gone wall to wall with this morning coverage. They have people everywhere. Earlier this morning, Clearwater, Florida, which kind of caught the southeastern end of this, a lot of surge in that area. But right now, it doesn't look too bad. The water has started to recede there. So this thing, this morning at least, was moving at about 14 miles per hour. So it is a powerful storm still, even though it's a Cat 1, Cat 2, but it is moving along very quickly. So the big thing I think is going to be the water damage from this. That's what it appears to be at this point. more than a wind damage issue, it's going to be a water damage issue. Because that coastline of Florida is so flat. They were talking about that Big Bend area. Like, you can walk out on low tide way, way out. It's not a quick drop off like other places. And that is an area, when you have a flat surface like that, flat water surface, that increases the danger of surges. And so that's what they're worried about in these areas. But this thing is far from over yet.
Yeah, there's going to be, as you say, some major flooding damage.
Yes.
Done in all three states, Florida, South Carolina, and South Georgia. And, there's not, if you, as I've said before, if you leave how do you pronounce that?
Apalachicola.
Okay, once you get beyond that, south to Clearwater, then the beaches aren't the same as they are in, say, the Panhandle.
Destin.
Yeah,
areas.
The Destin, Fort Walton Beach, Panama City, and then you get down to Clearwater, you're back to these beautiful white sand, pristine beaches that we're all familiar with and millions of people vacation. It's more marshy there around the Big Bend area than it is. That may explain why there aren't a lot of people who live there.
Yes.
Okay, there aren't big populated areas. There's a lot of little small fishing communities, but anyway, we will keep an eye on that. I have a good friend who lives in Hilton Head Island.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll get some of that.
And we say this, these people, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, we say they're used to these things, but every time, listening to some of the people yesterday who were deciding to stay or to leave, we're used to it, but I'm not going to take chances. There were some other people, I think it was in Perry, no, it was Cedar, what's it called? Cedar.
I know what you're talking about.
Anyway, in that area, about 100 people, it's a small community, about 100 people decided to stay.
Yeah.
And they were going to find the highest ground there, and I think it was a museum or something, a well-built museum, and they were going to stay there.
Yeah, the storm, I texted our chief engineer here at American Family Radio because I was just curious how many of our radio stations, American Family radio stations, the hurricane would affect. Might affect, and he said the eye of the storm is about to go right over the tower in Valdosta,
Georgia. Okay.
So we have a tower in Valdosta, Georgia, which, radio towers are the least of people's concerns. Houses and equipment, things can be replaced, people's lives first and foremost. But then obviously people have property that is going to be. There's going to be a lot of wind damage.
There's a university there in Valdosta.
Valdosta State University. But anyway, pray for those folks. And we have a lot of listeners in that area.
Yes, and I'm sure, 8 Days of Hope, I'm sure we'll have a contingent in there eventually, and Southern Baptist and Samaritan's Purse.